Greetings. Well, it's 1/1/2024, according to the world's time, a new year, and but it's not truly new in the dead of winter. That would be more like spring when life begins, starts growing, it comes back over and over and over and over and over again. So teaching that the Father also will come back and give life over and over again, even though in the middle of winter it does not look like it will happen. And then all of a sudden it starts growing again. The weeds start growing too. They always grow. They they seem to not take much to grow. It takes more work pulling them out than it does to plant something real that's actually good. I see a world that steals the Father's truth, is envious of it because it didn't even think of it, but it only sees everything as an image, looking through the eyes of the devil's heart and perspective. It just sees everything as an image that it wants to rape, steal, take for itself, sell, and then become worshipped and famous for that wonderful image. And even the image of Messiah's resurrection. Where did they get the idea with superheroes and whatnot? But I came across this image. There's a clip on YouTube, and I put it in the link. And I say that an image doesn't have to be evil every time or used for evil, but it could be used for good, for truth, even though that's not the world's intentions. It doesn't matter. The world's intentions are something completely different than the image that's portrayed. It never lives up to the image it sells. It never does the works for what those images represent truly in heaven, spiritually. It cannot, because the enemy cannot do any good. None. It cannot do any good from the heart, but it can portray an image that's not real. And therefore, anybody can do that, and people are good at that. Everyone's good at that, more or less, creating the image, which is not real by itself. It's just an image. And that's why we read in Hebrews that the things that they built before was only the image of a copy of the heavenly, and the heavenly is not to be thought of as physical again, as something materialistic, and then that's it, just some dead materialistic thing. Not that the Father's creation is evil because, dirt is some kind of material. That's not the point. But heavenly, meaning spiritual things from the heart, the Father's truth, his commandments, the spiritual images, which are real works in the heart. It looks like something spiritually. The best man can do is create an image on earth of those heavenly things. And then he believes that image is the truth. And he believes his own lie and is deceived by the Creator and thinks he knows what his word means now. I turn the radio on, rarely do. It was in, it doesn't matter what station. And I was hearing one of the, I don't know, one of those preacher things, and I listened to it for a little bit, and the person was talking about sacrifices. They do make themselves sound good with their words. There's no doubt about that most of the time. It's never been about the words, which just creates an image. It's about actually doing the understanding and meaning of that word from the heart, which doesn't look like some dead image only. Um, but he was speaking as if, in a way, like it's a good thing now we don't have to do those sacrifices like they did before. We don't have to do that. They're spiritual sacrifices, which is true. What the person said is true. Spiritual sacrifices, quoting scripture. Um, but he said it in a way of understanding as if back then, as if there was a massive change. Back then, people that believed, Old Covenant saints, had to do those things. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They did their own understanding of all those things, which is a huge, constant battle to further understand, because there's a lot in his word and there's a lot more to understand further. But that's how it's working. That's the truth. No, they didn't have to do those things. That was never a command. They have their own word saying, back to their understanding of that. Father's very own word says, did I ever require these sacrifices? Now he's speaking of the literal sacrifices, the sacrifices that they understood, because the Father takes no pleasure in butchering animals for the purpose of sacrifice. And those animals didn't cover, didn't forgive, did not take away the sin from someone's soul, from their spirit. It never did that, which they can go read too, preacher man. Go read that it never did that. Paul speaks of this. I think it's in Hebrews 2 and maybe elsewhere, but we do read that. It never did that. So why would the Father require man's understanding of sacrifices to literally do those things? And then it didn't actually take away real sin. The only valuable thing is what's real. That means they had sin in their soul, in their heart. It's still stuck on them. They were still destroyed. They were still in the death of Adam. They were still dead. They ate the bread from heaven, Messiah said, and they died and they were dead. It never gave them life, because that bread from heaven is pointing to the true bread from heaven. But the literal bread itself was not the true bread. Messiah said it wasn't the true bread. They ate it and they died. He's not talking about literal death, because everyone dies eventually, but the true life they never had. That's why Messiah says they died. They died. They didn't have life, even though they ate that bread from heaven. The Father's always teaching, and nobody's listening. Man does his own understanding, and when he does it, the letter kills, and it's even bloody murder, even literal killing. It's so bad, but it always kills to follow the letter and man's understanding, which is the letter, the image of the word, the image of the law, the carnality of the law, the letter, and not the spirit. And the spirit gives life, not the letter. Constant rightly dividing between his word and his word, because it doesn't mean his word is worthless now. It's just that the letter by itself isn't ever the understanding, and it can do nothing for someone. And these thoughts are just coming in right now, because I had this idea to put this link in and put the verses in with about the resurrection in Isaiah, and then whatever comes after that. But I've found it interesting to hear. But that would be someone's natural first understanding, is that it was required. It does look that way strongly. We can't believe the image. That's what's going to happen if someone never seeks the truth. They're going to just blindly believe that as if it's fact, as if it's truth, and they're believing a lie just for believing that it was absolutely required like that. that the Creator changes, that his law changes, that he made mistakes and now he's fixing them. He never made a mistake with the old covenant. He gave it over to man to see if, and when we say to see, he knows they can't. But this is because it's a righteous thing to let man go and screw himself and kill himself, because he's not Hitler. And that very much sounds like free will, and yet it's not. It's not what people think free will is. It's not that either, because the definition of free will is you could do anything at any time with no consequence, no matter what time, and you can do it every time, no matter what. And that's ridiculous nonsense. It's pride to think someone can do whatever they want. Yes, it appears that way. Go and do whatever you want. Go and kill someone, and someone can't even do that, can they? They can't just do what they want. That person has to have the go ahead to kill someone. They have to be real destroyed to be able to do that. How do you explain what's within, what's invisible? Just try to with words. If someone gave someone a gun, the average person wouldn't be able to do it. Now, if enough pressure came on them for their life, many of them would start doing it. But the point is, some random person won't just shoot someone. They can't do it, but they can, right? All you do is pull the trigger. No, that's something else is going on when it said cannot do it. Something is restraining. It doesn't matter what it is. There's a restraint. Fear, worry, whatever it is. In order to do that, you have to go into a stronger blinding and destruction for self in order to do that, where the destruction overcomes the carnal fears and restraints even, and then someone does it. But there's something restraining, and if that restraint is let loose, well, then it's all hell breaking loose, which is what this world is coming to, which is what's happening right before our eyes. But it's not as if it's never been true. The world's always been the way it's been, evil, but it's different. It's getting worse in this way. The restraint is lifting off, and it's going to show everyone for one final countdown, or whatever someone wants to call doomsday clock, like they even have. The devil's going to fulfill his own wicked prophecy, because I see that's what he wants, and in the hearts of people, that's what it wants: destruction. It wants destruction, and it wants to see people suffer. But when it comes on to that person that wants it, all of a sudden they don't want it for themselves, of course. So it will always be this contradicting enigma where someone wants it, yet they don't want it. It's a twisted, confused, evil heart. It does want it. It wants that, and yet it doesn't want it because of its saving its own skin for skin, like we read in Job. I wonder where the devil gets all his words from. He steals it from the Bible, steals it from the Father's word, steals everything. Can't create anything his own. Not even the evil he comes up with is his own. The evil he comes up with is from the Father's letter that man doesn't understand. Even that's ripped off and stolen for to do evil. It's a lot in his word. It's huge. In Job, we read, skin for skin, a man will do whatever for his own skin, He'll do whatever it takes, and that means killing someone, he'll do it. And that person was called good by people all their life. When that person does it, it utterly proves they are as wicked as you can get. It's utter proof. It's over. It doesn't matter that his life was threatened. It proves that a man is a murderer to the highest literal degree. It's over. It's utter proof. It's not as if it wasn't proven before that people's heart, man's heart is evil. It was already proven a long time ago that individual's heart was, but it's just utter proof. It doesn't get stronger than that. And there's no excuse for that, for anyone, for me, for someone else, for anyone. It won't work to say I self-defense, I saved myself. It's a test. It's pressure. And it's a more severe one, obviously. It's easier to see the bigger carnal test. It's easier to explain it because people can picture it easily. It's a pressure. It's a test to see what man is, to put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, proof for what his heart is. What will he do when there's a test? Because when there's no test, it doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't prove anything. Everyone can do good when there's no test. Good in quotation marks. Act good. Smile and wave. When we get what we want, then it's easy. And then when that thing disappears and when the money disappears, when something disappears that someone wanted, all of a sudden that person changes like a light switch and is going to go and do evil to people, go and deceive them, leave things out on purpose, try to confuse them, which is all evil. It's an evil heart. Deception is evil. Deception is often mostly done with a smile on someone's face, or at worst, neutral face. It's not usually done with an angry, obvious face in the public. In the dark, sure, but not in public, not when it thinks there's eyes on it. It's done with a smile so as to leave an image behind for the cameras that that person is a good person, was very calm and peaceful. The world's definition of peace is acting like you're peaceful when eyes are on you. That's the world's definition of peace. It doesn't know any peace. It should read the Bible about its own self a little more, that the wicked don't know peace. They don't know what it is. They never had it. They think they know it because of the image they create, which is acting like what they think peaceful is. Creating the image of peace is acting calm when there's eyes on you. Then it will apply peace to its own self and declare its own self righteous and peaceful. And if someone else is starting to get a little loud and a little bit edgy, that person has no peace. They're just some angry person and they're going to get voted down. Like, that's how it works. You have to act, you have to lie, you have to deceive in this world if you want to be voted in for governor. You can't lose your cool or ever speak the truth with a little bit of anger or any kind of image that isn't smiling and peaceful. That's what's going on. That's the image someone has to lie and sell if they want to rise further in this world. The more someone rises, the more destroyed their soul is. And there is no doubt about it. And there's evidence all over the place constantly for those that have risen very high. It's nothing to envy in truth. They're utterly destroyed. Their wife is destroyed and might even kill her husband. It gets so bad. Even though she's got millions of dollars, it does nothing for someone. It's incredible. It's violently, frighteningly incredible how much someone can receive and be worse than they ever were for how content they are, and the relationship worse than ever before, worse than the lowest of lows, worse than people with a few dollars, and they got everything and they're utterly wiped out like a bowl, destroyed. What is happening? What is going on there? Could it be the Father's word is truth? Even if someone gains the whole world, but they lose their own soul, what profit will it be to them? And that's the truth. And that's saying it nicely compared to going into more detail for what it is in some detail. Not that that isn't true. It's utterly true what Messiah said. What does it mean to lose your soul? Well, it's just some term. It doesn't mean anything in this world at all. No, that's bad. Their soul is gone. There's nothing left. It's like utterly wiped out. It's better to be dead. It's dead men walking. Let the dead bury the dead. And so it is. So let the dead bury the dead. Let the dead handle things concerned with death, sin, and this world. Messiah commands to follow him because he is walking in the way of life and truth. He's walking away from the death. And the understanding isn't a literal grave here. That's not it. But the image that comes to mind is being used, a parable, to teach the truth, of which only the Father can give the understanding of any given word or parable or teaching or truth in his word. And Messiah is teaching exactly that. That understanding has to be given what it is, saying the words never meant anything. To try to explain it and not have the true understanding means nothing, because anybody can try to explain it and they might do a good job of it. They might say all the right words even. like the Pharisees often did, because they sat in Moses' seat, which means they were quoting the law all the time. That's why Messiah said, do what they say, but don't do what they do. And even someone will say that about themselves while they're doing evil. Don't do what I do, but then they go and do what they're telling you not to do. That's called hypocrisy. That's called being an utterly horrible, evil, tempting example to all those that are around that person. The image created will make it look like it makes sense that the person is breaking his own word and doing what he's saying not to do. It's deceiving. No, it shouldn't be done. The person should not do that in truth, but then proceeds to do something that he tells everyone else don't do. Well, he would be right in that. Yeah, don't do what I do. I'm a hypocrite is what he's really saying. He or she. And that's blind. Hypocrisy is blind. It does not have any sight. It never sees itself. It cannot see itself. It goes crazy before ever seeing itself. It only sees in others everything it is, only seeing it in others, because it's always blaming and dumping its sin and the judgment. And that voice that's saying, this is what you did, this is what you're guilty for, it tries to dump the cargo onto the other ship and blame someone. So it's always going to look like someone's pointing a finger in this world. If someone saw someone in this world take actual responsibility from the heart, not looking like it, but actually doing that work from the heart, they'll stare at you like you're a zombie. They'll stare at you like you're from a foreign world that's never been seen or heard of before, a freak, an alien, if you actually acknowledge that it was your fault. They will look at you in disbelief and won't be able to believe you because you're telling the truth. The devil can't believe anyone that's telling the truth. It's going to ask you another question because it hopes that you're going to lie to them. Where were you when this happened? And then it still stares in disbelief for telling the actual truth right up front, right away, because everyone is lying all the time. So people are expecting to be lied to, and cops are expecting, and the average person is expecting. And then when it gets the truth, it doesn't believe you. It wants you to lie. It's going to try to ask more questions to trap you. It wants you to lie. It wants it. It wants it. It wants it. It wants it. Is that bothering anyone? It wants it. It wants it. But then if you lie to someone, they hate it. So they hate when you lie. They hate when you tell the truth. Well, what can you do? Can't please everyone. That's a false saying, because we're not supposed to please anyone. Not one person, or sometimes, that's like implying that you can please a lot of people most of the time, but not everyone. No, we can't please anyone. Better not be pleasing anyone. That's the truth. The intention of pleasing someone should not be done for anyone without partiality. Now the devil can take that and make it look like if you speak a truth, that's pleasing someone, or whatever. Take whatever someone said and twist it, mix it, mash it up like potatoes, and make it look like the truth, something good that was not that evil work, to try to make it sound like you just did something to please someone, because that's easy to do. That takes no discernment, knowledge, or skill, or wisdom, or anything. If it's evil, it takes nothing. It's already known how to do that. It's easy. It's as easy as breathing. You just follow your heart and breathe and do evil. That's it. It's easy to do evil. It spills out, pours out of the mouth, it pours out of the heart like dung. And it's easier than dung to do. But doing good is hard, impossible even. By our own power, it's impossible, but the truth is it's hard. It's the opposite. It takes everything to do even a small good, even a small truth, to tell the truth instead of a small lie to tell a small truth. It takes everything to do that. And what might happen to someone if they do? Are they going to be tempted to be worried for their soul? What will happen to me if I tell the truth? I'll get in trouble. In a world that's a constant lie, someone's going to say that to themselves. I'm going to get in trouble for telling the truth, so I'll lie. And then they go and get in deep trouble for their lies. And every generation can't figure out that it's going to get worse and worse and worse for lying. They aren't actually afraid or fearing getting in trouble, truly, according to what that means in heaven. Because if they were, they wouldn't do something like lie, which will absolutely get you in trouble. It's coming. It might not strike back in its full strength tomorrow, but it's gonna some point, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe a year, but it will, because the Father's not a liar. Because lies don't get blessed, lies get punished and cursed. It's a cursing to lie. It's a cursing for one's own self, cursing itself to lie to someone, to lie to self. It wants to be punished if it wants to lie. It wants to destroy itself if it wants to lie. No one would go and say, I want to destroy myself. But the truth is, they do, and people do. And to see that self wants to do that, how is that going to be done without power, without wisdom and truth from above to even see that for self? Because it's going to be in disagreement to that. The carnal mind's in disagreement about all things truth. It's enmity. It already hates it from its birth. It hates the truth from birth. It hates the spirit from birth because it's carnal from birth. It's conceived in sin. And then someone says they're in the Father's image. They were born in his image. They were created in his image. Man was created in his image. It must be the devil they're speaking of as God, because their own scripture says that a man is conceived in sin. He's born in it from the beginning. How much proof do we need for that, to see that? Look at what a child does. It's carnal. That doesn't mean it should be thrown in a dumpster, but this is speaking about the truth. A child is carnal. It's greedy. It's prideful. It's a deceiver. It lies to get what it wants all the time. Even at 1 year old, it's already knowing how to do this. It's conceived in sin. It's not in the Creator's image. Long ways to go from there. Far from the Creator's image at birth. And in fact, it only gets further away from that point. It gets worse if it doesn't believe truth, if it doesn't believe. It's not learning anything. It's not growing in his image, becoming in his image. A beginning where something sprouts and grows in the spring and not in the dead winter that the world calls New Year. But then the spring should represent and does resurrection life, which Messiah gives because the Father gave him to give. He doesn't do it on his own accord by his own power, but he's been given that power. He's been given judgment to do from the true Creator that the devil envies, violently envies. It's obvious for anyone that has eyes to see a little bit of man's works. It becomes more obvious. The more that the works can be seen, the more obvious it becomes. It becomes the truth finally. It becomes agreement with the truth in the heart. It becomes one with the truth. But it's still not there yet. It needs to grow still further yet until it becomes a giant tree and produces fruit and reaches that point of perfection. So always growing. Right now, things are dying in winter, but it is a new year in January at some pagan name, of course, because this is what the whole world is pagan. It's not like there's only a couple pagan things or some pagan religions. The whole world is pagan. It's all against the Father's truth. It has that in common, that it's all against the actual truth. They tried to bury Messiah and his resurrection. They couldn't bury it, so it overtook it to become it itself. And then it comes up with different images and stories and comics and things to steal the truth. It's envious of it. It likes the glory of the image portrayed, but it does not have anything and wants nothing to do with what it all means, with what it really means and is in the heart. It has nothing to do with it, only ripping the image of it. What man calls glory is dung to the Creator, and his word says so. Man's glory is his shame, and his shame is his glory. It can read that. So what kind of glory is that if it's nothing but shame? So man's glory is not the Father's glory. That's why we read, your thoughts are not my thoughts, and your ways are not my ways. And his ways are so much higher than our ways, as high as the heavens are above the earth. Very much is the point and meaning. Big separation. Man's thoughts are not the Creator's thoughts. So what he thinks glory means, it doesn't mean that at all. Zero. But the image could be right, but the image isn't the truth. So whatever, when that word is used in this world and someone says that's glorious, they're looking at a fantastic image, but it doesn't know what true glory is. It never seen it. When it sees it, and when it sees Messiah's glory, which is the Father's glory in Messiah, who looks like a poor man, a nobody, who's humble, walking, speaking the truth, when it sees that glory, the true glory, it exposes the false glory that everyone is around Messiah. It threatens with light to expose all of that false wickedness going on in the heart. When man sees true glory, he hates it. He shows his teeth like a wolf, a hungry wolf, and wants to devour it because that light is exposing its false glory. That is zero glory, like we read. That is no glory. And then apply that understanding to every single word. So whatever man thinks something is of himself, that this world already is fully, it's not that. It's not that. That's not the understanding. Because every good gift comes from above. So then the understanding can only come to someone's heart from the Father himself through Messiah. No one else can give that. No one else can do that. And when this is given to someone, truth, any truth, no one will see it because it's invisible, and no one will believe it because it's invisible, and they're already hating it. They're already biased against it. They don't want to believe it with the heart already, so it won't because it doesn't want to. That's the corruption in the heart. It doesn't want to believe. It's beyond, it's not man's definition of unbeliever. No, the Father's definition of unbelief includes the understanding that someone's heart also doesn't want to believe. It doesn't want to. I'm stuck. It doesn't want to. It doesn't want to. It doesn't want to. No, it can't be. No, don't say that. It can't be. I'm going to shank you. It cannot be. Because that's exposing the heart, and it's the truth. That's why someone would hate that. Because it's true that the heart doesn't want to. That's included in the Creator's definition of unbelief. Proof? Then why is it called the sin of unbelief? Does the Father punish something that has zero knowledge, has no clue genuinely? Why is it called a sin? Unbelief. Because it involves this corruption of not wanting to believe. Already, it's not without partiality. It's partial against believing. It's partial in not believing. It wants that to be true. There was never any requirement to just know all truth. There never is on anyone to just know truth. That's not the problem. The problem is a corrupt heart that doesn't want to believe. That's why it's called sin, the sin of unbelief. It's not just unbelief, it's sin. And it can't be called sin unless there's some kind of real, actual corruption, evil thoughts, evil beliefs in the heart. It can't be called sin unless there's an actual evil with intent going on in the heart, because sin is with intent. An accident that's genuine is not the same as sin, which is with intent to do evil. It's well, it's called something else. Even if the sin of that whatever it produced could produce sin, but it's different than sinning with intent to do an accident, to do a mistake, to basically a carnal dog leashing out and losing it for a minute because it's still a dog. It needs to die more to its dog self. It's not an excuse for sin. It'll be judged, but it won't be the same thing as a sin with intent. That's why we read in the difference for that. That if someone kills someone, by accident, there is a difference made in his word between that and murdering someone on purpose, which that's what murder is. It's with intent. But killing someone on accident, and that's why we have that word. I mean, the picture is pretty strong. You can picture it, and then fleeing to a city for a time. There's some kind of it's not provision for the act that ended up being evil, the evil act that the accident caused, but it's some kind of understanding, some kind of a different judgment to flee to the city for a time where you won't be hunted down because the Creator understands it was an accident. See, there's a difference. And even that should be repented for. So we don't do an accident, so we do less of those too. Because ignorance caused it, because sloppiness caused it. So there's still something to repent for or think about. It's not an excuse, but it very much can sound like it's an excuse, like that's being taught, that this is an excuse. Go and do it as much as you want. Where do we read that? Go and do accidents as much as you want? No, there's no excuse for it. It's just that there's some kind of understanding. It did not plan, it did not foresee, plan, or premeditate and think about and plot, then it's an accident if none of those things were done. It's not easy rightly dividing his word because this world is carnal. It wants something like black or white, and just there's things you can't, namely all his truth, that can't be explained to someone that doesn't believe and doesn't see any truth. It can't be explained to them. It really can't. And yet Messiah teaches the truth anyways, because he believes the Father's truth, that this is the right and only good thing to do this anyways. And for doing it, a few will believe because of it, and many won't. And that also produces the Father's will. The attacks, those that don't, is part of the purpose and his will, is to produce and cause something that's part of his prophecy and truth. It's for all those that don't believe, it's purpose too. It's ultimately all purpose, but the few that do, it's because of some kind of good work done, because someone spoke truth. And we do read faith comes by hearing. So it's with the intention in the heart to speak truth to anyone, and anyone without partiality, with the hopes that someone might believe, while also knowing that most won't, but some will, and it should be without partiality for all, as if all will believe. Speak it like that, but know that most won't, but speak it as if everyone will believe. That takes some serious rightly dividing in the heart to do, and not get confused and messed up and sin and evil judgment, partiality. Take some serious power to see those things in the heart and do them. One slip up of the thoughts already falling. It's already messed up. It's already sin. Just one thought against one person. How on earth to be perfect? Which is the command, be perfect. Now, man's definition of perfect, it has nothing to do with what Messiah said to be perfect and what that means. Abraham was told to be perfect. Man instantly thinks he knows what that means, and then he believes he is perfect. Plus, that's what the devil said to man's heart, to Adam and Eve, to all, that they are perfect because they are already in the Creator's image and they know good and evil. The devil says that man is already in his image. That's the devil's doctrine. Speak of the darkness. It goes dark when it's the devil's word and devil's doctrine. Needing to be created in his image, prophecy that we will be fully made in his image, especially true for believers to see and believe that. But then for all people to be created in his image in due time, a prophecy to come that's working now with those that believe, not working with those that don't, because it can't be working in unbelief. It won't. So there's a real difference. There's a difference made, and yet the Father's not partial in anything he does, and yet there's a difference between belief and unbelief. Well, pretty big difference. It's everything. Without faith, no one can please him. Faith is belief. So without faith, there's nothing. Zero. It's darkness. It's black. It won't receive anything in unbelief. Not by the sin of unbelief. Who's going to believe that unbelief is a sin? Maybe everyone is not so innocent as they portray themselves to be, because everyone's innocent. That's what I see. Everyone's innocent. Speaking of what the mind thinks, speaking of what it does and proves that it believes it's innocent all the time. Well, maybe not everyone is as innocent as it's portrayed, because just unbelief alone is sin. So how could that person be innocent truly if unbelief is sin already? That doesn't even count all the other things someone does and is doing and has done and will do. Just one thing is considered sin, and as soon as it's sin, nobody's innocent. Well, there is no one truly innocent, because everyone has sinned and continues to sin, and the many will continue to sin, and a believer needs to sin less and less. But the unbeliever will sin more and more. That's why we read that they will grow worse. Their corruption will grow more and more. Their sin will grow like a cancer more and more until it finishes its wages, which is death, which is the end. Very deceitful, because somewhere along the line, someone doesn't believe at all those wages. But in the end, it's death. And it's so undeniable, and man still rebels and doesn't believe it. He rebels all the way to the grave, that it's not death, that there is no such thing as sin. There is no such thing as I'm being judged. I'm destroyed because of what I do, because of sin. This is why this is so. My soul is destroyed because of sin. It resists that to the end. It never believed it. Never. It died with perfect unbelief to that. Worse than when it was 20. Way worse in unbelieving that, in not believing that. Way worse at the end than ever was before. It got worse, harder and harder, like a rock, until it's a gargoyle, just stone. It could care less about anyone or anything, and it just wants its own self to receive carnal things, pleasures, and money, and fame, and worship. But anyone else, no, kill them all. I mean, it doesn't care at all, as long as it's getting fed. That's what the heart is. As long as it's taken care of, it can act like it cares about someone else. Take away, and then that's a test to see what someone will do. Take away a little bit of that, as the Father gives and takes. Take away now, and what will someone do? Now, will that person even be able to act like they care? They won't even be able to act like they care. It wasn't real to start with. Now it's double fake. Now it's just extra evil, because the act was just an act. The only reason that person was appearing to do good was because in its own mind It was receiving what it thinks it wants and needs and whatever it's wanting. As soon as that's taken away, watch a person turn like a light switch. What does that prove? It proves they weren't doing good all that time. They were only able to look like it so long as they got what they wanted. The moment someone changes because something changed proves that the whole thing was a masquerade, a charade. It was just an act. It's crumbling. It's like a image falling down and crumbling to reveal what it really is. It was just the cover. That's easy to do for anybody. It's easy to do and act like that when someone has what they want. So in so many different ways, the Creator can put a test on and is putting tests on everyone without partiality. And it's proving things that the world does not believe at all. It's just completely numb and blind to all of it. All the proof that's happening every day, it's blind to. Very convenient always. It's willingly blind to it with knowledge. It wants to be blind to it. Because when it receives the truth, it wants it to go away from its mind. It will change the subject. It will bury it. It will try to get rid of it right away, which is proof, utter proof that it wants it to go away. It wants to have nothing to do with it. It doesn't want to see itself ever because it scares its own self to see itself. It scares itself to see what it's. It cannot bear to see its own self. It cannot believe in truth, how evil it really is. And if someone does a great evil, they will not be able to believe what that evil really is and that it's wicked. They will not be able to believe it in their heart, what they just did. They won't. That there's so much proof for that. There's no doubt in my mind. That's the truth. None. Will not be able to see it truly and acknowledge it. It will find a justifier, which is proof that it doesn't actually believe it. It can make it look like it believes it. But if there's a justifier and an excuse anywhere in there, it doesn't actually believe it. That's why someone justified and used an excuse, because it doesn't believe it. It can get near it by looking like it believes something when it's got a secret justification somewhere in there or an excuse, then it can look like it once again. But they think that those things can't be spotted by anyone because it's blind and it believes everyone else is blind and in darkness, even not knowing what that means, but it just thinks everyone is the same. So no one can see none. Everyone's dark. They can't see my works. The thing is those works can be seen. The work of justifying, seeing someone's intent and what they're thinking, why they did what they did can be seen for someone that has sight to see. And the Creator always sees it perfectly, always sees it, never misses it. Well, I think that's what I had for this one, and late here tomorrow. I just happen to need to wake up somewhat early too, so yeehaw. Um, so then the image can be used for good. It can be used to teach the truth. But in this world, it's almost always some kind of evil used for evil. Although it doesn't look like it a lot of the time, because that's what the enemy, that's what deception is. It makes it look like something it's not constantly. That's deceiving and deception. It's not called deception if it never did that, but it constantly makes it look like something it's not. That's the simple definition of it. It really does strongly portray and make it look like something that it's really not. In its heart, does not believe its own image. But the Father's word is full of teaching and truth and commands that have to be taught. The heart has to be taught. what those words and images and truth that the word creates, that the pictures are there, sitting there, waiting for it to be learned in the heart. And Messiah said that they will all be taught by Elohim. They will all be taught by him, by the Father, Messiah's word. How is someone taught by man when he says they shall all be taught by Elohim? Teaching comes from him truly. It can look like someone is teaching someone else, of course, constantly looking like that in this world with all kinds of different things, but not to be deceived. It's not happening in reality. A man doesn't teach someone's heart anything, but it does look like it. It does look like it. And that can look like it for all kinds of different subjects and anything. It's looking like it all day long, all the time. There's a lot to rightly divide, because that is not implying some other false thing now, that we're not supposed to do anything or say anything now because it's not me that teaches someone, and someone is disappointed because they want it to be their own work. Well, reminder, if it's our own works, then we can boast, but it's not. So that's why we read, no one can boast. It's not our own work. It doesn't come from self. It cannot credit itself for what it never actually did. So man believes the lie that he's doing something. That's part of the massive deception and problem. And after Messiah's resurrection, he dies no more. Like we read, he dies no more. He has the true life with no death, with nothing concerning death. And that is the hope for all believers. And it's not the same hope for unbelievers because they don't believe, but it's for them too. It's just that it's not reality in their heart. It's not their hope because they don't believe. But for believers, it's especially true already, right now. Early, starting now, it's especially true. That's why we read especially that Elohim is the Savior of all people, especially of believers, because there's something special about it right now for those that believe. It's not that it's not for anyone else in the whole world. It's just that it's not for them right now because they really don't believe. It's not real in their heart. It's not real to them. So there's a difference, a big one. Well, there was a few explosions here when it struck 12, and then it went quiet pretty quick after that. But I'm in a small town. Always something to celebrate, I guess. People want to celebrate something constantly. Try to forget all of reality all the time by doing that, I suppose. The only way to have any true celebration is doing the opposite, is not forgetting whatever truth and reality is. All right, peace, take care, seek truth from above.